Bojo, hello everyone. Welcome to Pow Wow Education Week. I think this is actually our first official Education Week event, and it's actually happening during Orientation Week, weeks before Pow Wow even happens, which is so lovely. My name is Riley Kucherin. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Fashion. I'm so excited to be joined by, drumroll please, Stephanie Pangowich.
Ani, hello everybody. My name is Stephanie Pangwish. I'm an Anishinaabe from Weequampong and Skamuk. I am here today to share a little bit of knowledge on Pow Wow 101.
The Pow Wow Trail is this beautiful thing that every weekend there's a different powwow all over. Is it Turtle Island? Pretty much, right? I know the Ontario has a trail.
Yeah, all North America. All the way from here. I know they even have gatherings that are similar down in Mexico. A lot of Indigenous people have similar types of gatherings, singing and dancing, celebrating their culture. But for like powwows, there's a specific, way of allowing it or having it within your communities, and I think we'll get into that on how it begins to how it ends, and all the things that happen in between.
And it's beautiful. Like that's what people do all summer is because you just travel from community to community and you see all your friends and you catch up, and dancers will like travel all over Turtle Island, like in competition, especially if it's competition powwow, right? And
Yes, for sure. If it's competition pow, some of the dancers will stay fit all year and really work on their dancing skills.
So have you been going to powwows all your life?
No, actually. Well, I did when I was younger. I remember being a young girl. I was probably about 8 years old. And I remember going to my first powwow, and the drum, the atmosphere there kind of attracted me. And both my parents didn't attend any cultural events. They just weren't brought up that way, like a lot of people in our communities. But when I first attended a powwow, I remember the feeling of the drum attracting me to wanting to be there, to wanting to dance. And I told my mother that I wanted to be a dancer. So she reached out to the community and she found someone to teach me how to dance. And they gave me a regalia. And off I went. I went to like maybe a couple of powwows by myself that year while I could still fit it, because kids grow so fast. And that was it. I just kind of always went to, my local community ones growing up. I always enjoyed it. I always enjoyed meeting the new people, watching the dance styles and seeing the pride, within our community members. And when I grew up, I just happened to have a partner who was a singer, and his whole family was part of the Pow Wow Trail. And so when we started our family, our children just grew up on the Pow Wow Trail. Every weekend we would go sing and dance and go to traditional powwows, to competition powwows. Powwows where we're just invited as a guest drum or host drum, and it's a lovely atmosphere to grow up in. It's a lovely community.
I was gonna say it sounds so beautiful because there's such like a community effort to like get you ready for a powwow, for example. Like the whole community comes together to make your regalia, and all your aunties are like joining. You're getting all these different pieces of your regalia. It like requires community and kinship to enter it.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes from, learning how to sew your own regalia pieces. First identifying what style you want to dance, and learning how to sew your own pieces. Or if you don't know how to sew, then you can watch your family members as they sew, or you can reach out to community members that are available to sew. And then, as you progress or as you get older, you'll want to add some beadwork to your regalia, or you can do it all at once. Sometimes it could take years to put a full regalia together. And beading itself is a time-consuming process, And I know my very first beaded regalia took 5 years to put together. So it is time consuming, but there's so much love, and it's like every beaded piece that you make, you remember, stitching it. You remember creating those pieces for your family or for your children or for people in the community. Yeah, so there's a lot of pride when you make your own things, or even when people have made them for you. Yeah, and you get to wear it with, because it's all made with love. So much of it made with love.
One thing I've been thinking a lot about is every community would be different, right? And they would all have different kinds of ceremonies specific to that community. But powwows are kind of something different, right? Like they're newer actually. Do you know about the history of powwows and kind of like how this got started?
Yeah, for sure. So a lot of nations would have celebratory dances whenever they came from, hunting or war. And there was a lot of communities would celebrate through song and dance. And there was a time when when it was a lot of males that were dancing, because most of them were the ones that were going out for the hunts. Like I'm not saying it was only men. There were women that also did that too. Um, so when they came back, they would do a lot of dancing, and usually a lot of the women would stand on the outside and kind of hop in a what do they call that, stationary position in support of the men in their community. And and that kind of evolved eventually to the powwow. And when these dances were banned, were illegal, that was actually during the time when Buffalo Bill, who was doing his showcase in the old Western days, he would showcase us through a grand entry. And so with the grand entry, he would have all the dancers lined up, and it was just so ironic that he was making money off something that we were banned to do during that time. So that's where the grand entry came from. But when it comes to powwows, it kind of evolved and kind of became part of just the way powwows are done. So I guess powwows, you can kind of consider them as kind of being a pan-Indian. And it's something that's like that, I guess, there's a certain set of ways of doing it across North America. So with the powwows, you'll have the grand entry. So then the grand entry will start with, the eagle staff, and then behind them would be the flags, and then behind them you would have, maybe the elders in the community and the head dancers, and then it would start with either the men's or the women's golden age category. So all the older dancers, and then they would rotate back and forth between different categories between the men and the women, all the way down to the children. So that would be the grand entry when they all come in. And so that would be followed by the flag song, and then they would post the flags, and then they would have the veteran song. And so all the warriors that fought in different wars would be acknowledged for their time that they've and their life that they've given to help our communities live the way that we live right now. And so once that would happen, then they would start maybe acknowledging with the head dancers or acknowledging the royalty that is there in their community. And then they would start the whole powwow, and then everybody would start dancing. They would have intertribals, so that would mean that you don't have to be in regalia to come and dance. anybody from any nation can dance. You don't even have to be indigenous. You know, it's all the spectators can come and dance too if they feel like it. And yeah, and then they'll, after they do intertribal, sometimes they'll go into categories. So different category dance styles that they'll have, they'll showcase them, they'll share a little bit about the history of each category. And then usually after that, they'll maybe have some more intertribals, usually some social dancing in between. Some will have like games like the potato dance, or you know, some people will have musical chairs. There's all kinds of fun ways to get other people involved, right? Some will have the round dance. Yeah, so there's all kinds of fun ways to kind of get the spectators just sitting there, get them out there dancing. And that's one of the things that I love about POW is you get to visit with people, you get to make new friends. There's such good vibes.
Good vibes, good vibes only. Only good vibes. That's the number one rule of Pow Wow. Good vibes only. No bad vibes.
Exactly. And it's hard to go over there with like a negative vibe because a lot of people are just smiling and enjoying themselves, you know, and you'll even feel it from, you know, the singing and the dancing and all the little children that you see, you know, that are watching all the older people dance. You can see it on their face. You can see the pride. You can see, you know, you can see the happiness in people's faces. It's lovely. I love it.
I love it too. Just to recap a little bit, so Indigenous peoples have been celebrating since time immemorial, all sorts of dances, all sorts of celebrations, all sorts of ceremonies. And then colonization changes things, and this rodeo culture kind of taps into that celebration and the pride and the dancing, and they create this grand entry. And then I think like that's the beautiful thing about Indigenous people, their ingenuity. They kind of, you know, they evolve with it and they make it their own. And we still use grand entries, but instead of being the spectacle and, you know, showing off for white people and someone else is profiting off that, now it's showing off to community, and the grand entry still happens, but it's, I think it's like more for us, and it's more more pride and celebration than spectacle, I think. You mentioned different categories of dance. So the ones I know, like fancy, there's jingle dress, grass dancing. Could you talk about some of those? And is it true that grass dancers are the first ones to go? Do you know about that?
Yes. Yeah. So there's a story behind the grass dancers that before community events would begin, like the dancing, the grass dancers would go out and flatten the area for the rest of the community, because back in those days we didn't have lawnmowers and tractors. So the grass dancers would go out and flatten the area and prepare it for the community. And so now we kind of use it in the same way. So usually before anything else starts, the host drum, we would call it all the grass dancers to come and help us prepare the grounds for the powwow. And so usually all the grass dancers have to be the first ones to be ready.
Got to be on time.
Yeah. Yep. No Indian time for those guys.
And what is fancy?
So there's two fancy there's two fancy dance styles. So one is the men's category, where they have two bustles on their back. So one at the top, one at the bottom. In that style of dance, I believe originated from Oklahoma, and it's a very, very fast style of dancing. I've heard that it represents a young horse that is unbroken. So a lot of kicking and, you know, spinning. And they would have little competitions of men's fancy dance styles. And the women would be watching And so the women would have, shawls over their arm. And during the competition, the women would be like, I think I could dance faster than you. And then they would be like, oh yeah? And some of them would put on a shawl, or some of them would put on the bustles and then compete with the men. And so that was kind of an evolution of how the women's fancy dance style came upon the power trail.
So it used to be kind of heavily gendered along the binary, and slowly that broke down.
Um, yeah, just like kind of like how it was an evolution, I guess, where women were just like, you know what, you think you could dance fast? I can do it too. And then the women just went out there and did it.
And so does that fancy include, so is it like fancy shawl? Is that the
Yeah,
women's version?
yeah, yeah.
And what else do we have? We have jingle. Is that a separate category? Jingle dress?
Yes, the jingle dress is its own category. The jingle dress is actually the newest style to come to the power trail. It's only about 100 years old, and it originated from the White family in Lake of the Woods area. So, grandfather had this dream while his granddaughter was sick of this dress that would help heal her. And so the dress was made, and I know it brought some healing to her. And her name was Maggie White. And so her and her family were the originators of the jingle dress, and how it was kind of brought to Indian country. It was kind of, it originated, so Lake of the Woods is like Northern Ontario. And it just kind of exploded because it's such a beautiful sound, the sound that those jingles make. It's a healing style of dress. And I think a lot of people can feel it, why it's been so popular. You know, you can hear, I don't know, I think it would almost kind of, in my mind, it kind of like similar to like what the shakers sound like, or when I've heard stories of the beginning of time, that's what kind of a similar sound like with the shakers. But that's only my version. That's not what I've heard or anything. That was just something that kind of clicked in my head right now. But yeah, it just kind of exploded, and it's kind of all over North America. So there's like an old style jingle where they don't do any spinning, or usually they just move forward. And then there's contemporary style where they have a fan, and then they do a lot of like movements with their fan and their arms and their feet. And they do spinning. And yeah, so there's a couple of styles there.
And are we missing any?
The women's traditional.
Hmm.
The women's traditional is one of the first styles. So remember how I was saying when the men would come back, that the women would be on the outskirts dancing. So that's the original style. So stationary dancing in one spot and kind of bouncing to the beat of the drum.
I'll pose the question to you. What is a sacred fire, and why is it lit all day?
A sacred fire is a direct connection to the creator. And so when you have things that you need to pray about, or just if you just want to give thanks, you can go to the sacred fire and bring. Sometimes there's medicines there available to you if you don't have any, and or you can, if you have old tobacco that you need to um, I don't want to say dispose of, but if you need to give back, then that's where you can release all of your medicines. And yeah, the direct connection to the creator. Um, Now, the reason why they have it throughout the ceremony, and I know it happens like back home, like when people pass away. I think it's like an energy portal.
Mm.
Uh, but as far as if there's any more information than that, then I'm not too sure. That's all I could say about that.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
What?
about that.
um, could you speak a little bit about what's the significance of powwows in schools, in universities? Yeah, what is the significance of powwows in academic places?
Good question. um, for me, when I was an undergrad, it was an opportunity to celebrate, our indigeneity and to share with the rest of the university community, a little bit of our culture for them to attend, to be able to, celebrate with us um, some of our dance styles, some of the history, because they might have questions about drumming, for example, and sometimes we might not have the answer. But if you're there and you're listening, you know you'll hear different stories from the MC, or about the different dance styles, or about the drumming, or about the different songs that are being sung. And it's definitely a great place to learn, as well as just kind of engage with other community members. So it's it's definitely like an opportunity for students to learn what it takes to create a powwow, because there's so many behind the scenes. Sometimes people start planning a year, like practically a week after the last powwow, start planning the next year, and communities do the same. They'll get their head dancers right away and their host drums right away, and try to make sure that people are all set for the next year, because sometimes people are busy, and so you want to make sure that they're okay for those dates for the next year. Um, but yes, so it's an opportunity to learn how much work is involved in putting on a community event such as a powwow, and and it teaches so much about um, I guess those leadership skills, working within a team, and all the, I guess, different protocols that are involved with it. So even if you're a non-Indigenous student and you want to get involved, that's definitely one way to kind of learn about Indigenous culture, some of our culture, in terms of protocols and things like that.
That flows perfectly into my next question, which is about Jaganash. How can non-Indigenous people respectfully participate in a powwow?
So there is some things that, number one, listen to the MC. Um, number two, because the MC will tell you, if it's an honor song, or during grand entry, they'll usually tell you to rise and to remove your hats, if they don't adorn an eagle feather. So they'll tell you if an honor song is happening that you need to rise. They'll tell you when it's not okay to take a photo. They'll tell you how to take a photo of dancers, which usually you go up to them and you ask them if you can take a photo of them. But other than that, do not touch people's regalia unless you ask. Absolutely do not touch any feathers. Um, it's it would be, in my opinion, impolite to kind of step over people's regalia. So walk around. Um, Even the drum area, it would be best to kind of not go into the drum area. If you want to take pictures of the drum too, talk to the lead singer. If you want to, if you're ever interested in doing some work with singers and drummers, talk to the lead singer. because there are some drums out there that do kind of do some like artistic work with, like, you know, DJs or people that are starting to kind of create new things with drumming. If you're going to use anybody's photo in anything, definitely ask them first. Yeah, because being in a public setting like that, you know, people will have their children out there, and sometimes people don't want their children to be posted in, you know, certain things, which is understandable. So definitely just be mindful of people's regalia, people's sacred items. Um, Enjoy yourself, you know, have fun, you know, talk to people. When it's intertribal time, get out there, you know, just go socialize. And yeah, it's definitely an opportunity to learn. Yeah, and it's an opportunity to learn how to be respectful of other people's items. So that's.
Can non-Indigenous people purchase beadwork?
Oh yeah, they do. So if you want to buy some beaded bling like this, that was one of the things I was going to say. I was like, all right, step number one, make sure you're wearing your biggest, baddest beaded earrings so people know you're ready to powwow. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes they will wear, you know, beaded earrings, and if they do, it's good for them to know, you know, who the artist is, and yeah, because wearing art like this is basically a promotion of Indigenous artists, and so buying authentically, I am all for it.
So purchase right from the artist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Purchase it from the artist, be proud to wear it, know where it comes from. Photography is sometimes okay, always ask permission.
Mm-hmm.
I assume that goes the same for sound recording. You wouldn't want to be sound recording without permission.
Yes.
Are pets allowed at a powwow?
Absolutely no dogs.
Trust that they're not allowed. This is like one of the issues at the Ryerson powwow because so many people use the Ryerson quad to walk their dogs.
Oh yeah.
So we're like constantly going after people with their dogs, and I don't know. It frustrates me because like you wouldn't bring a dog to like a church, or you wouldn't let your dog run around like a classroom. Like it just
Yeah.
it's like a level of respect. So don't bring your dogs to a powwow.
No.
How does a powwow end? So we've had a sunrise ceremony, a sacred fire has been burning. We have our grand entry, typically at noon, and then we've heard all sorts of categories of song and dance. And then how does a powwow end at the end of the day?
All right. So usually we'll end. So if it's a traditional powwow, sometimes they'll wind down, you know, by thanking everybody for coming, and they'll lay out a blanket of giveaway items, and they'll have, you know, items to give away for all the dancers and the singers, all the staff that have helped to make the powwow possible, and everyone will shake hands, and there'll be a giveaway song. So everyone will dance with the items that they received from the giveaway, and then once that's done, they'll close up the powwow with a closing song, and everyone will exit the eastern doorway, and then they'll have a traveling song for everybody to make sure that everybody gets home safely.
To the end of our list of questions, unless there's anything else, any final words of wisdom you would put out there into the world?
Oh gosh, words of wisdom in terms of powwows. Just enjoy them. They're so beautiful. I love them. Yeah, if you want to dance, remember to reach out to community members. They're there for you. They're there to help you learn, and enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself.
Miigwech for joining us for Pow Wow Education Week. Thank you so much. Yeah, and we'll see you there online. We'll be chatting, we'll be hashtagging as we're watching the Pow Wow video.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me, Riley, and everybody on the council and all the teams that are making this happen. Chimigwech.